What's up? Last weekend it was Baylor's own Rob Wright. This weekend it's Tennessee's Nico Iamaleava. What does the transfer portal and NIL mean for little Baylor? I mean, it's the Wild West out there. Where do the Bears belong? Tim Watkins joins me and Terrance Ganaway to discuss. This is a special edition of Please Bear With Me. Here we are, and here we go. This is Please Bear With Me, and I just want to get some show things out of the way real quick, and then we're just going to get straight into the conversation this evening. I texted Terrance this morning because I have been very behind on keeping up with the production of this show and putting out some clips this week, and man, we've got so much great content from last week that I still need to clip up and publish, and we're going to do that. I'm behind on the March Madness bracket, so the link is in the comments. It's also in the description. If you want to go vote for your favorite Baylor football player left, you should do that. But when I texted Terrance and apologized for my hectic week this past week, he said, bro, this has been a busy week for me too. And so what better way to get through a Sunday evening than talk about what may be causing quite a few college football fans some anxiety and some concern and some questions maybe being asked. We welcome in our good friend from Bears Illustrated, Tim Watkins joins us tonight. Hey, Tim, what's going on?
Oh, not much. I haven't put my name in the transfer portal. I think me, you, and Terrance are the only ones not in it right now.
No, it depends on who's paying, right? I mean, I think that's what we're learning about this new age of college sports.
Put another $2 million on the table, and I might be interested.
Yeah, for a $2 million pay raise. I did actually see a tweet a few days ago that was like, "Hey, Baylor fans, would you suddenly root for Texas A&M, or Texas Tech if you could have $2 million?" Guys, I do consider myself like a hardcore, rabid, faithful Baylor fan. But if you put, let's not pretend like that's not a lot of money. If you put $2 million in front of my face, I might put on a different T-shirt. In fact, I probably would. If that disqualifies me, okay. But, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, that's a lot of money. And that's that can set you up for I don't think you can live off of $2 million alone for the rest of your life unless you're really frugal and you're smart with it.
You invest half of it back and you're good.
It depends on when you enter the market or not, right? So I think, man, we should definitely look at this as a 3 to 5 window period of what college athletics looks like, because I do think there's going to be massive overhaul and probably overcorrection, because that's just what happens. I mean, it is Wild Wild West. The NCAA kept, handcuffs on athletes for far too long, and then the floodgates open much more broader than we could have imagined. And now I think it's going to be very hard, just willing it in. But man, It needs to happen. It will happen. But I know you said earlier about Nico in Tennessee, but this just happened to us last week in basketball. So I think the major sports are in big trouble moving forward.
Yeah, so that's the discussion tonight. If you're joining us live on YouTube, here's what I want to do. The more Terrance and I come on Sunday nights, the more I kind of want to experiment with the new format, see what we can do. So since tonight, like I said, we're a little behind on some of the other stuff we've been doing. Seriously, if you're watching live, and I'll say this a couple more times before we wrap up tonight in a little while, comment, and if we get your questions in the comments, I can filter through those and we will respond to your questions. Let's make this a discussion this evening. I know there's probably a lot of questions and perspectives to hold. So Tim, let's start with you. I actually texted you last weekend about coming on this evening to have this discussion because we were talking about basketball and Rob Wright. Now, of course, with this situation in Tennessee, it surely will not be the last time a big-name quarterback ask for a pay raise and a coach says no and they leave. I am fascinated. We don't know as we tape this tonight where Nico is actually going to end up playing football next season or if he's going to get the pay raise he's looking for. Tim, opening thoughts. This might be kind of a broad way to start, but what are we doing in the Wild West of college athletics right now?
I think Terrance was absolutely right. It's an overcorrection. 10, 12, 15, 30, 40, 50 years ago, you're talking about a car. You're talking about a baggie of money, $10, $20, $50,000, maybe a couple $100,000. You're talking millions now, millions of dollars. That's not sustainable. Too many people who are giving this money to NIL collectives expect a return on your investment, right? They want to get gratification as a sports fan of their university. How did that work out for how many other programs last year that fell kind of down? Kansas spent a lot of money for a second round tournament exit. Texas Tech last year spent a good amount of money on football and still won 8 games. This year, they're spending even more. What happens if they don't even hit double digits? Is that money? Is Cody Campbell going to keep putting 10, 20, $30 million into Texas Tech NIL every year for no hardware? It's not sustainable. There needs to be regulations. There needs to be actually firm contracts associated with this to protect both parties. What happens if, say, Nico gets cut and said, sorry, guys, it didn't work out the first year. We're not going to pay you $2 million. We're not going to pay you anything now. I'm just letting you go. Is it a business contract transaction now? Does that protect the player? The universities, they've got the money. I'm not worried about the university's money. I'm worried about $5 NIL collectives of thousands of hard workers and graduates of a university giving $5. I'm worried about the parents getting involved and guiding the conversation. I think we saw that with Nico. That is what's been happening with the Rob Wright situation, as I've reported, as Sikkim 365 and Ashley Hodge and that team has reported. There was a situation where Rob Wright signed a contract with Baylor for a certain amount of money. I've heard $1 million, $1.5 million, under $2 million. His dad shops around. BYU comes crawling and says, hey, we'll do 3.5. Sold. Let's go. Let's move on. Is that the best situation to be in as a parent, as a child wanting to invest in their future? That's a 1-year transactional decision versus a 5, 10, 15-year decision. Not to say that BYU is going to ruin him or anything like that, but there's a definite structure and process that Baylor has success with Scott Drew. Will Rob Wright be as good in the long run at BYU? No idea. But it's a fascinating position, and it's not going to last longer than a couple of more years until there's more regulation, there's more control, there's more rules, because I think the only parties that are winning are third-party handlers and agents. I think those are the only ones happy, and maybe some lawyers that are getting a lot of billable hours.
You make a good point. I want to ask both of you this, and we're all parents now. Like, for a normal college student, anybody that chooses to go to Baylor, those 4 years are an interesting in-between period, right? At least for most of us. Not for everybody, but for most of us. We're still relying on our parents for some level of support. For everybody, that could be different. I worked through college, but my parents were also continuing to supplement me financially through college, right? Like that kind of relationship is normal. And then at some point after college, for most people, the experience is you graduate, you get your own job, and now you are fully supporting yourself as an adult. Where that comes into pro sports is like when a kid jumps to the NFL or the NBA, usually at that point they are prepared to tell mom and dad, if they need to, hey, mom and dad, get out of my business, And maybe hopefully that's still a good relationship you have with your parents. And a lot of people go pro and they take care of their parents, and that's wonderful. It is fascinating to think about. How does someone, like I heard someone criticizing Rob Wright this past week, why does his dad get any say in his decision? And I said, bro, when you were 19, didn't your dad still have a ton of say in your decisions too? Like, Isn't that how that works? That's a really interesting angle to this whole deal.
You have to listen to the people around you, and a father figure or a true father, a mother, an uncle, whoever you're reaching out to and leaning on, they should have a voice. Rob Wright's 19-year-old. And look, I don't love how he exited. I'm not going to besmirch the man or his family. He made the decision that he decided was best for him. I don't know what I would have done in that situation. I probably would have taken the money, but I don't officially know because nobody's waving $2 million in front of me. I've done more for less, though. I've done more for less. So
Preach.
I'm not going to get mad at a family, at a young man who's trying to make the best decision for him and himself. I don't know what his conditions were around the situation. He might not have been very happy at Baylor for all we knew. And maybe he was asking other opportunities around because it just wasn't clicking, wasn't fitting. I love Baylor University. I also tell people that are looking at it is like, it's not for everybody. It's not for everybody. So whatever situations led him down his path, it's the one that he and his family needs to. It's the one that God wants him on, and go be great. I'm rooting for him every night except for the night he suits up against Baylor.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's tough, man. Whether and there's speculations of what motivated his dad to shop him around. My mom had cancer in high school, and if I could go get $1 million, $2 million more to do cancer treatment or get her to the best doctors in the world, I could care less what anyone on the internet is saying. And I respect my coaches, but I would make the best for me and my family. So regardless of the situation, the people that are close to you are going to help you make these decisions more often than not. And this is only the tip of the iceberg. I mean, we see it on the flip side sometimes where coaches get this great recruiting class in and land these guys, and then they up and leave. And so where do you draw the line? The contracts really don't hold the coaches that much because they're buyouts. And then sometimes the coaches just get up and leave when they have promised to everyone and their mama that they're staying at this organization. I mean, look at baseball last year at Texas A&M. Now he's at Texas this year. This is going to continue to be a problem until you bring adults in the room, professionals in the room at the NCAA level, and you make it mandatory that some of these programs have contracts that, to Tim's point, definitely benefit both sides, but hold this in a professional manner. And then we can cut the personalities and we can cut all the friendships out. I love my job. I love where I work. Somebody offers me 200,000 more. I don't need 2 million, 200,000 more. I'm like, hey, man, it might be worth it to explore, especially if I'm doing the exact same thing. There used to be 2 sport athletes in college. There's not many anymore. So if Rob was going to play baseball for $3.5 million, then I would see how you could be conflicted in the decision. But you're doing the exact same thing. You're going to wake up at 6 a.m. You're going to go to practice. You're going to lift weights. You're going to go to class at 9, and you're going to go back to the gym at 1. Like, there's nothing that changes other than, now he's in, Provo, and he's not in Waco. And depending on what time of the year, Provo probably feels really comfortable right now. And Waco is going to get steamy, although he plays in an arena. I say this. We need to hold coaches, players, and everybody in the athletic department accountable to performance metrics, performance goals, and then activities that are detrimental to the team or enhance the play of the team. If you're overweight, you're fined. If you're late to a meeting, you're fine. If you're, misreading, constant plays every week and team cannot count on you, fines. I mean, you try to hold people accountable because at the end of the day, I get your parents in here, but how do you be a head football coach or head basketball coach and a guy's making just about as much as you are? How do you tell that guy to get up and go work hard every day? I think that's probably the hardest thing about this is being in the coach's seat. Now, I do not feel sorry for him, but I think that's a very hard thing to do.
Let's go back 9 months. Scott Drew, Kentucky. He was offered that job. It was a raise. He flew his family out to Lexington. His family, his father, Homer Drew, Bryce Drew, the family around him was saying, dude, you got to take this. You got to take this. He didn't. What did he get? He got a raise, and he got more support, and he got higher NIL resources. So he renegotiated an existing and active contract to the betterment of him and his family. What did Nico try to do? What did Rob Wright try to do? The exact same thing. Now, the difference, and I want to point this out, Terrance, and you mentioned, is those buyouts. So if Scott Drew were to leave, Baylor would be remedied in some form or fashion. There was something holding a stickiness of some sort together to keep this thing active. With college athletes, there's no buyouts. There's nothing at this point. I think that's the change where you can see actual validity of multi-year contracts, if you will. Right now, everybody's year to year. And I think that's why, Scott Drew is really building his basketball team with that mindset. I mean, Joshua Jonwuna is still on the roster. He's not entered the transfer portal. There are rumors that he will. If he does, Baylor's going to have 0 returning players that played a single minute of college basketball in the green and gold next year, if that happens.
And that's a coach that's been here 20 years
and won a national championship, bro.
But that's just the era of sports. And how do you get over that? And I don't think you do. The thing with coaches and having a buyout and players having a buyout is coaches are usually locked up with multi-year deals. I think we're on borrowed time with some of these athletes. I mean, you're constantly recruiting the people to stay, and then you have to go out there and find someone. And at the end of the season, you don't know what you're left with. Now, Coach Drew, I love the man. I know him. He's a great person. And I think for me I think just get back to the basics. Get back to developing people. And I get it. You're going to lose every once in a while. You're going to lose a guy that you spent 2 to 3 years developing. Wish him luck. But, let's go beat him a couple of times a year if we get the chance. The thing is, the last 3 years of Baylor basketball has been declining after the national championship. And I know 2022, we had a bunch of injuries because we could have made a deep tournament run that year. But we had all these young, talented athletes that were one and done. And so it kind of felt like we were already in that NIL deal before it really got busy. And now we're having to go out and recruit, and we're not going to be able to compete. We don't have enough people, $14,000, $15,000, 15,000 people, putting in $5,000, where these other alumni bases, 60, 80,000 people are donating, and they got money to go. Duke just lost. They had the number 1 guy in high school last year, and he's probably going to be the number 1 pick. They said, hey, we're going to rebound with $8 to $10 million of NIL. We shouldn't compete with those guys. I say Baylor do exactly what Tennessee did with Nico, is say, listen, we want you here, but unfortunately, it's not the right price for me. And there's always, in the NFL and probably every professional sport, there's always a fool with money and power. And so they're going to pay for you to come. You just don't have to be that fool. And I'm glad that I'm not saying Nico and, Tennessee are not going to both be great off for this, or Baylor and Rob. I wish them both luck. I'm going to root for Baylor obviously more than I will, Rob. But I love Big 12, and I love to see how they compete. And for me, I just think that you have to give the athletes some power to say, hey, we want you to be here. But if they try to act like, hey, they're holier than thou, I think you pull the rug from them and you let them figure out life on their own. And I think Nico is going to have to figure that out really soon, because there's some other big programs out there that have already committed to their guys, and he's going to be left out. And he was decent for Tennessee last year. I think he lost every game I think he was the main part of every loss that they had last year. He played terrible in big games. So good luck finding some place that can build around you.
I do want to pivot the conversation, guys. And by the way, if you're joining us live, feel free to leave a comment in the chat. We'll address questions as you send them in. I do want to pivot this conversation to football, because a lot of the conversation we've been having for the last few minutes has been around Scott Drew, Rob Wright, basketball, and that's certainly worthy of discussion. But, again, the Nico news this weekend, and then this is a Baylor football show. I feel like, especially after seeing what's happened with the Baylor basketball team in the past month, I'm sitting here scratching my head going, how in the world did we keep everyone we needed to keep for the football roster? I am honestly shocked. And I think this is a story where we don't need to let Dave Aranda go without credit here. Because my biggest fear after the Texas Bowl was that Texas A&M was immediately going to text Sawyer Robertson and try to get him to be their quarterback next season after how well he played towards the back half of the season. My biggest fear was that Texas was going to see Bryson Washington and think, reload. My biggest fear was that Michael Trigg was going to get scooped up by a big playoff program. So, one, I guess two things to discuss. One, how is it that Baylor managed to keep Sawyer Robertson and Bryson Washington and Josh Cameron and all these guys? And so a lot of it's those kids and what they want. Like, I don't want to take that away from each of them individually, but clearly the program did something right here. And then two, Tim, early on in your first comments, you mentioned what's going to happen to programs that start shelling out all this money and don't see results. I think Baylor dodged a bullet by we shelled out $1 million last year for a quarterback who didn't play beyond week 2, and we just got lucky.
Fan made $1 million.
Yeah,
That's a rumor.
yeah.
Hey, man, I think you got to go back to evaluation, bro. Like,
Listen,
like you got to have scouts in the room, bro. I would have told you he wasn't $1 million quarterback.
But this is my point, Terrance, is like Baylor got lucky that the guy you had on the bench that nobody else was trying to pay yet just happened to be the man, right? So either one of you can go first. I want to kind of bat that idea around first. First of all, how is it that Baylor kept this core going into this coming football season? And we don't know. I mean, a couple of them could take off after the spring, but all signs would indicate the guys you need are still on campus and going to stay on campus. And two, what kind of success does Baylor need to have this season to continue keeping guys on campus like Sawyer Robertson?
So I was just looking at the incoming and outgoing transfer list on 24/7 Sports, and Baylor has 11 transfers out. All but one of them has a destination. Isaiah Dunson is the only one that hasn't committed, at least that I can see. Corey Gordon Jr. Is going to Louisville. Everybody else is going, and Alvin Abaselli is going to Houston. Everybody else is going down a level.
And frankly, Corey Gordon Jr. was the only guy that announced a transfer out that I was like, dang. And he wasn't even an every down player.
No, he wasn't. And he was a guy, I think Alvin Abaselli has a lot of upside, but he was a guy that started some, didn't start some, started some, didn't start some. You see Kyan Roberts-Day, a highly recruited guy, but a guy that was really just a pass rusher, hadn't really had everything click. He's going to UTSA. So the fringes of the roster, to your point, Scotty, is really where Baylor got hit by the transfer portal. But coming in and looking at it, again, this is really the second year Baylor has said, and Coach Aranda has said, the transfer portal is going to be critical for us. They've rebuilt their defensive secondary with Tyler Turner coming from Oregon, with Devin Turner coming from Northwestern. Those are two guys that are most likely going to start, if not play large roles at the safety position. They rebuilt their wide receiver room with Kobe Prentice coming from Alabama, with Cole Wilson coming from Texas State. They rebuilt the back end of their quarterback room. So Walker White is coming in from Auburn. A lot of these guys were 4-star high-level recruits as well that Baylor is coming in. 24/7 really leans into the blue chip ratio. Baylor really helped themselves in that area. So the ability to keep the right guys, and I'd say for the most part, they kept the right guys, to be able to supplement that with additional blue chip talent at critical positions where your scouting, your development, it just didn't work with a couple of players. That's really what they've done. So the ability to drive that and kind of accentuate the roster is something you're going to see a lot more in football. Basketball, you've got 10 10 players, 15 players at most with a couple of walk-ons. It's easy to see a kind of full rebuild on the fly. But go back, 2 years ago with G.J. Kinney at Texas State and brought in, 30 transfers plus and rebuilt that team from them hiring a new coach to them coming into McLean Stadium and beating Baylor and having one of their best seasons ever. So Baylor has really invested a lot in that culture. You see the person over player a lot less as the front-facing mantra and motto. Now you see we buy players. That's the difference of really what Aranda is kind of identifying. It's not what it was 3, 4, 5 years ago. It's probably not even what it was 2 years ago at this point, with how quickly NIL and the transfer portal is really changing sports as we know it. And Aranda has been slow to react in a lot of ways, but when he has decided to make changes, those changes have been aggressive and they've been spot on. We just have to hope he can continue to drive those type of changes when Baylor does stumble. And hopefully that's not this year.
Tim, you've got good access. You've been running, Baylor 24/7 Sports for a while. Do you know any NIL details on the football side? Like, I mean, I don't need to know what Sawyer necessarily is getting paid, but like, we remember the shirts we pay players, like you referenced. So clearly it's an emphasis, but like to Terrance's point earlier, Baylor doesn't have the same number of not even close, same number of big money donors as a Texas, even a Texas Tech. So what does that look like right now for the football program?
Yeah, from what I understand and what I've heard, and is Baylor's probably in the top third of the Big 12 when it comes to NIL budget for football specifically. They're probably in the top 2 or 3 in basketball in the Big 12. They're probably a top 10 to top 20 overall in basketball. They're probably never going to be that area of football. Just to your point, the bandwidth, the size of the university, we need a lot more rich lawyers and doctors to really drive that. We need Bill Gates to marry in and really start being a sugar daddy for us. So there's some things that we have to have happen to be able to get to that next level. So what are we doing? We have to use our money smarter. So to say that Sawyer Robertson came to Baylor at a certain price, had the season that he did last year, he's at a higher price now. Washington, all of the other guys that have kind of meandered or kind of sprung up last year in terms of performance, they had leverage to be able to say, hey, I think my worth and my value is now X. Baylor was able to meet those players at the numbers that they needed to do. It's going to be fascinating how the structure of roster management, personnel management happens. We see out in Stanford where Andrew Luck is the general manager and can actually fire the head coach. That's never happened before. Cal is trying to do the same thing with Ron Rivera as well. Baylor has a general manager. I don't think he can fire Dave Aranda right now. Absolutely, positively not. But Terrance, to your point earlier, you mentioned, does a coach really want to deal with this crap? A coach is getting paid less than a star quarterback. How much weight can he actually do with this? How can he negotiate that? I don't want Dave Aranda sitting there negotiating NIL contracts. I want him devising a scheme. I want him coaching a scheme. More and more universities are going to be investing in personnel management, in contract management, in that type of skill set, and keeping your coaches coaching. Actually, right now, a lot of coaches are having to wear both sides and both hats. They're having to play both sides of that. I have to be the coach. I have to be the manager. I have to be the motivator, and I have to negotiate deals, and I have to work with agents and parents and third-party contacts. That is the most unsustainable part of this. You need, as Terrance said, you need adults in the room. You need professionals that are actually trained and know how to do this. You have to have a bigger picture rather than saying, I really want this guy. I'm going to give him whatever number he has. 4 million, sure, got it. I got to have you. You're the guy I need. It's just like we don't want the offensive coordinator in the NFL making the first-round draft choice. We want the personnel department. We want scouts. We want the general manager making those decisions for the overall betterment of the program rather than just saying, well, I need a quarterback. I'm going to go get him.
Yeah, absolutely, Tim. I think you have to have someone who 24/7 looks at personnel. The thing about the NFL and the NBA outside of your roster guys, they can come and go any day of the week. One day your core guys are going to be the core guys, but that the depth rolls around at the bottom so much. With us still being in college, it's going to be hard to get players in and out of semesters and keep them eligible. But I agree with you. You have to have someone who worries about X's and O's, and you have to have someone who worries about the Jimmys and Joes. Like they got to be separated. You cannot bring coaches don't have the time or bandwidth to do it, and you're going to see programs continue to slip when they don't, put the resources to bringing in the number of people that need to be successful. Now you look at Georgia, Alabama, Clemson. They have like 50 people in their recruiting department. Baylor's only always had a small crew, and I think we've grown that over the past, 5 or 6 years. But when you have so many of those people and personnel evaluating talent, getting sticky with some of these big names coming out of high school, even before NIL, I think that's where you win. And obviously they recruited Ohio State, those big programs recruited better than most. One of the things you asked about was, how does Baylor football keep these guys versus Baylor basketball? My thought is very simple: the culture in the locker room. I'm not saying Scott Drew had a bad culture in the locker room, but it did feel like there was 7 guys that played pickup basketball every other week. There were some weeks where we were moving the ball around, everybody knew what they were doing, and then there were some weeks it was like we were playing open gym. And I'm not saying that those guys didn't know each other, didn't like each other, didn't want to build relationships. But I think starting off 2-2 or starting off 2-4 and finishing 2-4 and finishing 6-0, I think that brought that locker room together. And I think some of those guys gave Baylor a hometown discount. Like, hey, I want to stay here. I want to be with this program. And I think we got something special brewing. If they can have Sawyer Robertson for 12 games last year, are we in the Big 12 championship? Do we make it to the playoffs? And so I think some people are reading the room and saying, I think we got our team. I think we got our guys. Like, let's stick it out for another year. Now, if the wheels fall off Auburn early this year, I think that's when you start seeing people like, I would rather go somewhere, especially a Bryson Washington. I think Sawyer is going after this year regardless. But, these talented young guys, I think that's when you start seeing them get shopped around. And then I think Aranda's going to be looking too if I think this is a make or break year, and I don't think this is a surprise to anyone. So we have to continue to get better there. But I think Aranda and his team have done a really good job of recruiting personnel in-house and people that are coming in through the transfer portal, as well as high school seniors. And I think the culture is slightly different in the locker room. And then lastly, basketball boys are divas, man. I'm going to say it right now. Football, like, we really just get down, like, we just ready to go. Basketball boys are divas, and I think that's what you run into with personalities. I say that without, trying to offend anyone.
Shots fired. Shots fired.
Let me address a few of the comments coming in. If you're just joining us, feel free to comment in. We'll address your questions or your thoughts as they come. Tim Watkins from Bears Illustrated joining us tonight on Please Bear With Me. Scotty Swigler, Terrance Ganaway. Let me address a few of these comments. Baby Avenue or Baby Ave says, don't miss the SMU player. I don't know who you're referencing, Tim. Did we have a transfer in from SMU? Who am I forgetting?
Did we? Oh, Trey Wilson did go to SMU. You are right. I forget they're in the ACC. It still doesn't make any sense to me.
And in the college football playoff this past season.
Playoff.
Terrance, before you started talking, our friend Bear the Truth, who watches a lot of our shows here at Rogue and is a good friend of the show, he commented this, and it's similar lines of what you said. And I do want to address a couple of these things you mentioned. He said, winning breeds culture. Culture doesn't breed winning, in my opinion. Recruits don't want to hear about culture if you don't come off a winning season. you are speaking Terrance Ganaway's language for one there. Anytime Terrance and I get into football conversations, it's always about winning. But Bear the Truth mentioned this, and Terrance mentioned this. They said that's the difference between Dave Aranda's success and Coach Drew's issues. And I just want to raise my hand and point out, one of those programs has been infinitely better and more consistent at winning than the other, and it's not the football program.
I agree with you, Scotty. I agree.
If it's winning builds culture,
I disagree with
Scott
that.
Drew has a culture.
I disagree with winning builds culture. I don't think culture is the bedrock of any foundation that you're trying to winning or losing. Like, it is set in the way you coach, in the way you develop players, the way you communicate, in the way you get the best out of players. I don't think winning precedes anything. If anything, it's culture precedes everything. Now, what I would say about what you said about the basketball program, the last 3 years, that's what I'm talking about, NIL and chasing these recruits.
Bro.
Okay, but that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about.
Okay, but if we're talking the last 3 years, I was ready to fire Dave Aranda before last spring.
I think I was riding with them the whole year.
We need to check some text receipts.
Check the receipts. I just said we need to run the ball, and then we started running the ball, and guess what? We won the games. This is what I would say about men's basketball, and I know this is a football show. Scott Drew is an amazing human being. I would want him to be the father-in-law to my kids any day of the week. The guy is an amazing human being. He has developed players on and off the court for the last 20 years at Baylor University. He has done more for the school as a coach than I think Grant Taft did as a coach in the football world. Now, that may be setting some people off, but I think Scott Drew, in the rebuild he did after what happened in the early 2000s to get to where he is today, is flat out miraculous. However, the asterisk for me is he had a mantra of developing people, taking projects and getting them the best. What I loved about Art Browse is Art Browse could care less about NFL development. He cared more about winning at Baylor. And I think we have to reprioritize that, and we can keep the culture of joy. I don't have an issue with that. And I think you talk to, some of these guys after the end of the season, they talk about the spiritual journey that they've been on this year. That's what we want to hear. At the end of the day, you want to win too. And so I think we got to get back to developing players and stop chasing these one and dones.
Terrance, everything you just said would be
wrong?
a beautifully scripted, on-point sermon if the man didn't have a national championship ring.
Bro, I said everything was great until 3 years ago.
A championship, bro.
Okay, but I said it earlier in the segment. I said, 2021 he won a championship, and 2022 we had a bunch of
he just casually won a national championship at Baylor University.
That's hard to do. But what was the roster like? Was it players that have been in college for a while, or was it players that we got 3, 4, 5 players in the NBA right now that could still be eligible to play at Baylor, like first round picks, top lottery picks.
Yeah.
They still be eligible to play at Baylor. We win 2-3 championships if those guys are still here. Now, I know this the culture of the game, but I like developing people, man.
This raises something we've talked about this on the Pete Souza show here at Rogue, and then we're going to get back to football, but it's difficult, Terrance, because in basketball, there's been a one and done culture forever. Like, that's not an NIL thing. I
agree, but there hasn't been Scott Drew culture.
They stopped letting Kobe Bryant and LeBron James go straight out of high school, right? So, and you're right that hasn't always been Scott Drew's culture. Although he's had plenty of one and dones prior to the last 3 seasons. Like, Quincy Miller exists. Like
how did that pan out for Quincy Miller?
Panned out pretty well for Baylor. He played really well for Baylor, but.
Quincy came in with a veteran team around him.
No, you're right. So let me get to the second half of my comment. What we've talked about on Pete's show the last couple of weeks is Scott, because I sent a long freaking tweet about this. You probably saw it. When Asamoah transferred, I tweeted this. Because my favorite parts of Scott Drew as a coach have been similar to yours. It's been Corey Jefferson, Taurean Prince,
Quincy Acey.
Quincy Acey's my
Royce
favorite.
O'Neal is my
favorite.
perfect example.
Royce
Yeah.
O'Neal's an example. I mean, we can all name guys. I'm forgetting a big one. Taurean freaking Prince. Did I say his name yet?
Mm-hmm.
These guys that came into Baylor, and you scratch your head. And when they leave, they're bona fide NBA basketball players. Like because of the 4 years they spent with Scott Drew. That's what I hear you saying you want to see again. The problem is Jason Asamoah is that. Like Jason Asamoah, you give him 2 more years at Baylor under Scott Drew, I think that dude's a killer. I think he's maybe not Taurean Prince, because Taurean Prince was a really, really good basketball player. But that's the kind of development I wanted to see from him. But what did he do, Terrance? He transferred because he wasn't getting minutes. So I don't know how you find the kids that are going to in basketball. I think we need to get back to football because that's our lane, and that's I think it's a different sport. But in basketball, for every kid that Scott Drew's like, you come spend 3 years for me, and I can turn you from a 2-star into an NBA player, because that's what Scott Drew, I know he can do it. He's done it with a lot of guys. What are they going to do after year 1 when they play 2 minutes a game? They're going to transfer to a mid-major where they can start. Like that's, I just don't know how you recruit guys.
Listen, I get it, Scotty. I truly do, man. I understand it. I get it. Selfishly, that's just what I want to see. I was a 2-star athlete out of high school. A lot of the guys that were on the roster when I was at Baylor were 2-star guys in high school. And what I love about the culture that you build is you go to work in the mines together, and then you come out and you can say, hey, look what we found. We found all these, nice diamonds and jewelries and pearls, but you got to go to work together. And I think what exacerbates the problem in basketball is AAU. Every year guys can change a team, and so they're just not used to being with guys like football. Football, you would have to uproot your whole family and life, and you move to a different area, or your parents are commuting all over. Basketball, there's probably 10 good AAU teams in Dallas. You can play on any of them any given week. And so these guys are a little bit more, nomad than they are homebodies. And I think that's the problem. And I don't know where to stop that with AAU, because they get recruited all the time by better programs. But I do think for Scott Drew and Baylor, we have to run that risk of having a, Jacoby Walker come in on a veteran-led team. I mean, look at our freshmen this year. Our 2 freshmen had to take the role of veterans. If they could just play basketball and not be stressed, we probably do get to the Sweet 16, Elite 8. But we don't have any veterans around them. So I'm not saying they have to be all-star veterans. I'm just saying they got to be, what's the big guy that
Terrance,
won the championship?
I think this
Vital,
is where,
Mark Vital.
Oh, Vital.
I think this is where the transfer portal kind of kicked Baylor last year, and I want Tim's perspective on this, and then I promise we're going to get back to football because I have questions for you about football. Terrance, I think Jeremy Roach was supposed to be one of those veterans, but he transferred in from another culture, and he was overpaid. He wasn't worth what we were paying for him by the end of the season. I think Jaden Nunn was supposed to be one of those veterans, and
I was really surprised with Nunn this year.
He's a streaky player. He had some really, really good performances. He had nights where he disappeared. Langston Love was supposed to be one of those guys, and I feel horrible for him. Dude can't stay healthy. I think the basketball issue might be a little oversimplified, but I'm very interested to see how he builds this roster, and it's so freaking crazy that you're basically going from 0 from last season to this season. I agree with you. I don't think it's sustainable. No, exactly the word I was about to use. Yeah. Tim, final thoughts on Baylor basketball.
So my senior year at Baylor was Scott Drew's first year. So the man saved us. It's the greatest rebuilding job in the history of collegiate sports, in my opinion. No doubt about it. Even without the national championship, it's one of the great.
Agreed.
So getting that out of the way, second point, yes, and that's one of my concerns so far with the transfer portal, and the first 3 commits they got were all 1-year eligibility guys. So you've got Tunde Yesufu coming in, who might be a one and done, might be a multi-year 5-star guy. You've got Agman coming in, Rete coming in. All these guys that are one and done guys. It's like, great, we're going to be in the same spot. Jeslyn Bodo that committed as the center today is a possible 2-year player. I would love to see us get some more multi-year guys to kind of rebuild that culture, because you have to get off this carousel of rebuilding. Who has done that well? I think you look at Houston, has been exceptional. I knew you were going to do that. I knew you were going to.
U of H, go Cougs.
Houston is doing what Scott Drew did 6 years ago better than what Scott Drew is doing today. Yeah. Second, Purdue is absolutely fantastic at that stuff. I'm a Boilermaker. My parents went to Purdue, so I'm always going to speak about them. You know, surviving the loss of one of the most dominant players in recent college basketball years in Zach Edey, and still having a top 16 caliber team is nothing to hold your nose up at. The ability of these teams to be able to provide, again, a stickiness of culture. 2 massive things have changed for Baylor in this area. Number one, how much consistency did Scott Drew have in his coaching staff for the first 18 years, with Jerome Tang rising up from end of the bench assistant to his right-hand man for a decade? That's gone. We had an entirely new coaching staff outside of Jared Nunnis and Tweety Carter being promoted into a bench role. It was new staff. This year, we've got Bill Armstrong leaving. We only have 1 spot to fill. So I think our strategy of roster management, roster development is going to be a little bit more cohesive and intense. Really, we blew our budget on Omier and Roach last year. Omier, I think, was an A-plus fit in terms of his production, what he could do for us. But Roach, he was a combo guard that we tried to make into a point guard. That was a bad scout fit. That was not a role that he was ready for. He's not a pick and roll maestro. He's not the type of point guard that Scott Drew has had success with. He's a different type of scoring, playmaking point guard. Scott Drew has had significantly more years with an all Big 12 point guard than without in his time at Baylor. I fully expect whoever they get is going to be an all Big 12, at least honorable mention guy.
Totally agree.
I don't know if that's JJ White. I don't know if that's Agbim. I don't know if it's somebody that we haven't gotten yet. But he's going to be able to develop a high-tier offense, probably a top 20 offense. Jeslyn Bodo is going to be able to bring in a very nice and strong defensive culture. A lot of the guys that they're bringing in, I think, are more two-way type players versus Roach was really an offensive creator. Omier, while he is a dominant elite rebounder, he's not a defensive playmaker. He's a guy that can put his arms up and get a block shot every once in a while, but he's not a guy that can really stop somebody down low and switch out on the perimeter and make things happen defensively. Bodo is, and I just really like saying Bodo, quite honestly. So to pivot it over to football, though, one of the things you mentioned was about the AAU culture. I think we're starting to see some of that culture seep into football with the 7v7, 7-on-7 stuff. You're seeing more of these weekend tournaments. I'm showing up to this team. I'm showing up to that team. I'm good to go. I'm curious what your thoughts are on the 7-on-7 type tournaments, which really do, in my opinion, are the gateway to what AAU has become for college basketball.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point, Tim. And I saw my neighbor's kids getting ready for a 7-7 tournament today. It is it's crazy, but that's just the norm. And I think 7-on-7 has been around for a while, where you get the teams around DFW. Everyone has one, but at the end of the year, when 7-on-7 is done and football begins, everyone kind of settles back at their own place. Byron Nelson is where my school is zoned to. And so we face South Lake. Now, will those guys play together? And have they played together 7-on-7 growing up? Yes, most likely here in the Northwest ISD. And some of the things that we see, you just want to win because you want to have the best teams to win state. But I think once the season starts, they all gravitate back to their natural teams. And I think for basketball, people will uproot their families to move a basketball player to another team because there's 5 guys. And if there's another star, then you can be the co-star and y'all both can get minutes. That's a great point. And I would love to, spend a little bit more time thinking about it because I don't know if my answer, sufficed or even made sense as it's starting to unravel in my head. But the AAU culture, and my son is playing baseball for the first year. I think your son has played baseball for a while, Tim.
Basketball. I got a basketball boy.
Basketball. And so that culture, AAU or select or whatever club you call it, it is insanely more aggressive than what I know of basketball. And so I don't know how you keep these guys humble. I mean, I just used to go out. I had a chance to go to Texarkana High my sophomore year in high school. I had my mom asked me. I could have lived with my mom and my aunt in Texarkana. She's a coach there. She's an all-time winningest, volleyball coach there. I think she has like 400 wins. I could have lived there and been great, had a bigger exposure. But at the end of the day, I just wanted to play with my friends I grew up with. And I didn't care. And my uncle, who played, several years in the NFL, he said, if you're good enough, they'll find you. Mm-hmm. And for me, I had the opportunity to go to Baylor and, Houston. Baylor was never on my radar. And if our Browns don't go to Baylor, I don't think I ever play at Baylor or in the Big 12. So very fortunate that I had an opportunity to play at Houston, develop there, be 1 or 2 freshmen to play that year, and then go on and develop at Baylor as well. And you just don't see that anymore. Now, what I will be coaching my son is like, hey, it's not where you start, it's where you finish. But I would love for him to stay at a program for 4 or 5 years with a coach. And I thought I would be at Houston for all 4 or 5 years if our Browns had to stay. My mom died, our Browns left. I was in shambles, and he reached out and he gave me a home, and I'm forever grateful. I wouldn't know you two knuckleheads if it wasn't for him.
Well, and if you're a 2-star recruit, I'm a negative 8-star recruit. So I'll just put it that way.
Same. Totally the same.
Yeah.
Let me pull up a couple more comments here, and then I have a question I want to ask you guys about football and the current program. We got 2 comments from Team JPC ×3. First of all, he says 7-on-7 is a scam. It's all about when you get them pads on. I hear you. I like the attitude. Clearly, Terrance does too. But I would say, the last 7? No, I think it's every Super Bowl since 2019 or 18 has been won by Tom Brady or a Texas high school football quarterback. And I think that quarterback development piece for 7-on-7 is where it's valuable. But I obviously agree for the sport as a whole. And then he was talking, I perceive this as, bro, share what you know. Like, if you're going to tease the class, like, go ahead and spill the beans here. Not going to get into who and how much, but Baylor players were definitely pursued by TAMU, Texas, etc. I think I know that conceptually. I don't know details. I don't have any insider knowledge. But if anybody has insider knowledge, put it. Like, hey, if you're going to talk the talk, let's hear about it. Let's share what you know. We always share what we know when we come on this show. We don't try to hide things from anybody. We like to tell it like it is. But hey, here's my question. I pulled myself off the stage instead of centering myself there. Here's what I wanted to ask you guys about the football program. Let's think about the 2025 season. And there's 2 things we've kind of discussed around this NIL thing that I wonder how they play out for Baylor in 2025. And I would love both of your perspectives. For one, we've talked a lot tonight about how winning creates a culture that, or as Terrance might say, your culture that creates winning. Your winning culture is going to make your school attractive to players and perhaps allow a school like Baylor to keep a Sawyer Robertson for an extra year when he could maybe go make a little more money somewhere else. Like, that's the only way for Baylor, I think, to stay competitive with the biggest programs is your football has to be good. Like your football has to be good. So how important is this 2025 season from that perspective? And then second question, we've talked about development a lot tonight, developing players. I'm thinking of a guy like Caden Knighton. I'm thinking like a Taz Williams. I'm thinking of some of the big name high school players that Baylor scored. Maybe even like an Edward Griffin, like kind of the fourth quarterback on the bench right now, theoretically, right? Some guys that were really touted out of high school. I don't expect Caden Knighton to lead the team in carries. We've got Bryson Washington. Taz Williams is going to have to fight for a spot on the field. We've got about 5 receivers that can go. So how important is Baylor's team success to keep some of those guys, and how do you view that when, let's say Caden Knighton is still behind Pendergrass and Washington most of the season at that running back spot? What keeps him at Baylor instead of going somewhere he can start?
Listen, I think when we look at U of H basketball, I know I'm going back to basketball, but this is what I saw. Them practicing how they got there. Oriama always talks about competing. Nick Saban talks about competing. Everyone at Baylor right now should be fighting for a roster spot. I don't care if you're, Edward Griffin, you're the fourth guy. There's 2 guys that are not going to start in front of you. And so if Sawyer Robinson goes down, what happens? And I think when you compete at a high level, you get an opportunity because I tell my kids this every single day. You never rise to the occasion. You always revert back to your training. And so as long as Baylor is competing and training these guys at a high level, I think that's when you keep people. These athletes, great athletes, competitors want to be Coach Hart. They don't. I mean, I talk to my boss several times a week, and I'm like, "Hey, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? What do I need to do?" And she's like, "You're doing great. You're doing great." I'm like, "Give me something to work on, please. Like, tell me I'm doing something bad so I can be like, all right, it's time to lock in, TG." And I think competitive athletes want to be Coach Hart. And I think what we saw last year from Dave Aranda and staff is they were Coach Hart, and that's why you got people back. So is this year important? Absolutely. I think it's the most critical year for Dave Aranda since he's been at Baylor. And if he doesn't know that, someone should tell him. I have a sneaky suspicion that he understands importance of this year from the recruiting class. This is everything he's asked for right now. And I think we're going to get a very hard-nosed football coach this year that's going to, play some really good defense. And then we're going to have some guys on offense to make plays. To keep Knighton, you don't want – listen, all tides lift, rising tide lifts all boats. You want all 3 of those running backs to get a lion's share, and maybe we can be like Arkansas in 2007. But, it's just you have to entertain them, give them reps, give them snaps, and just wet the whistle enough for them to be like, hey, when you come back, it's your time. And the thing is, Bryson, if he keeps playing at the level he is, he's probably going to be a junior that leaves, and that gives Knighton a year or 2 to play high-level football at Baylor.
I think when you're looking and when you're not comfortable with the situation, when it's not working out for you, a relationship, a job, a university, an athlete at a professional program or a college program, they want to see a path to achieve their goals. They want to see a viable way that gets them where they want to be. I think when most people get wandering eyes when they're looking at something else, it's like the situation they don't see a way to meet their goals, to achieve the goals and the things that are really important to them financially, responsibility wise, promotions. Am I going to be the new manager? Am I going to be the new VP? Am I going to be the backup running back next year? Or am I going to be 4th string again for the 2nd straight year? If Bryson comes back, yeah, I think there is a chance if he comes back for a senior year, then all of a sudden it could be a situation where, I just lost another year. I'm going to go play somewhere else. I think that's a viable reason. And one of the things that I love about the transfer portal, where an athlete can make a decision to achieve their goals, short-term or long-term. It puts them in the power seat. And I think that's the way that it should be, just like coaches have long time been in the power seat to be able to dictate what their goals are. So if your culture is being able to provide people a path to achieve their goals, to develop them as men, to develop them as women, to develop them as athletes and overall people, and providing them a path to achieve what is important to them, and that thing is not just everybody just wants to start, it could be very, very different, individual to individual. And that goal can change from day to day, week to week, month to month. So having those conversations about what's important to you and how do we make sure that we're putting you in the position to get there, that's the criticality of it. And that is what I truly believe is a culture setter, of trying to understand how those things change for individuals by individual and at times of their life. As a manager of a sales team, I have people that want to be promoted in my job. I have people that are like, don't promote me. I just want to sit here and close deals and make as much money. Great. How I train and how I coach them is going to be very, very different. Same thing for a head coach. Same thing for a position coach. When you're having those type of relationships, when you're getting honest feedback back and forth, that allows you to be able to set up the guardrails to achieve those goals. If you can't find the guardrails in the path to get there, and that's when the transfer portal is going to be a great place. Regarding the criticality of this year, Dave Aranda has had a bad year, a good year, a bad year, a good year. To be blunt, we need a good year. We need a good year and a good year. I'm of the opinion that I try to be a realist. Baylor is not a team based on its infrastructure, based on who it is in the college football world, where our expectation should be winning a college football championship every year. That's not realistic. We are not Alabama. We are not Ohio State. We're not one of those. So what does realistic look like? In my opinion, if you take a 8-year or 10-year period, you should make a bowl game, probably 75% plus, and you should compete for a conference title maybe 25 to 33% of the time. Maybe win it once or twice out of those 10 years. That's what realistic expectations look like to me, based on the current situation that we're in.
Hey, Tim, one question. I don't want to stop you, but
no, go ahead.
3 years, we're going to have a below 500 season out of that?
Yeah, I think, 2 or 3 years where we're 5
and that would be the standard. That would be the standard.
I don't want that to be the standard. I think that's a realistic expectation. We're not a team that's going to win 10 years every season. We're not.
I get that. But from a recruiting standpoint, we know how big recruiting is.
Right.
If you're a team that, okay, you go on a run for 2 years and you go to 2 back-to-back Big 12 championships, and then you dip and have a 5-7 season, I think coaches have been fired for less.
Yes, they absolutely have. They absolutely positively have. And we've seen that really for every coach since Art Briles. Prior to Art Briles, and really the Taft to Briles era is the forgotten era.
Yeah.
That's I'd say the realistic worst case scenario is really those, God, however many years that was between Taft being exited and Briles being hired. That was the dark era. That is what Kansas is exiting in their area. Every program has a realistic floor. We lived through ours.
So Arizona State.
Yeah.
You talked about budgets. Is Arizona State top 3rd in the Big 12 in football budget?
I don't think so, no.
All right, so why did they capture as much success? I get it. We don't have the infrastructure to compete for national championships, but I think we have the infrastructure to compete for a playoff bid, especially in this new era.
Absolutely.
There's 12 teams.
And I'd say, well, what is your expectation? Out of 10 years, are we making the playoffs 5 times? Because that's elite.
But look at
once or twice.
Look at the field. We don't have Oklahoma anymore, Texas, A&M. I think the biggest competition that we'll probably see, every year TCU and Tech as they continue to build their program. I think Colorado, somebody's going to go post Deion one day, and then Colorado is going to be in rebuild mode for the next 25 years. But Arizona State, I mean, if you look at the field of play, why is Baylor not considered the best athletic program outside of all the money that's going into Lubbock to get to the playoffs? I mean, it should be Baylor, in my opinion.
I'm gonna raise another point that we've been talking about here at Rogue for the last week. The school in the Big 12 that's taking the best advantage of the current moment, and I think the parity and the wide open nature at the top of the conference is BYU.
Yeah,
that was the name I was thinking.
You're
but
mostly
they're throwing money
at
it.
Well, that's the thing, and so that's not going to be Baylor's path to do it. But I mean, if they make a Final Four, next season, which that's a big if, but they're going to have the talent to do it. Mm-hmm. That's an athletic department that's going to be at the top of the conference.
And they were almost in the Big 12 championship too in football.
Right.
So to answer your question, Terrance, I think there are, especially with football, there's a little bit more of a slow cyclical nature to it. You have a Sawyer Robinson for year and a half, 2 years, really, as your starter. What happens if Walker White doesn't develop and all of a sudden we don't have a quarterback for a season and we're betting on him? We're going to have a down season. We may not make a bowl game. You really grow your offensive line. Again, that's an area where we really truly need to see a lot more development of those high school guys, younger transfer portal card targets like Colton Thompson. That offensive line has to gel. What happens when you have a season, and I think Arizona State was this, where 4/5 of your starting line is a senior? You don't have them the next year. You're going to younger guys. You're going to unproven guys. So with Baylor, I think that's one area. The second area is schedule. I mean, look at the two teams that won or went to the Big 12 title game. They had by far the easiest schedule metrics. We saw Baylor's performance in the first half of the year of Big 12 play, where the schedule was we're playing the best teams. The back half, where we weren't playing the best teams, all of a sudden we started winning. So I think the schedule is going to be a big variable that is kind of hard to predict. I mean, everybody had Iowa State at the top of the board. Everybody had who were some of the other teams at the top of
Utah.
Utah. That's right. Utah was going to run this conference. The Utes are still saying that. Utah was going to kill everybody. They beat us when they were healthy. Then all of a sudden, their 47-year-old quarterback gets hurt, and wow, they can't even tackle anybody anymore.
So devil's
those
advocate.
are the two primary reasons that I think there is going to be a cyclical nature. Where out of 10 years, 1 or 2 years, yeah, we're going to struggle to make a bowl game.
I want to get in here with two things, then I want to hear Terrance's comment. One, Brian commented, and I agree with him. I tend to agree with him. He says that, I'm assuming to Tim, is an unacceptable standard after what we've seen.
Yes.
If that's all Baylor will do over the next 10 years, what do you think will happen to the collective, NIL, I assume, and overall support of the team? And I was going to say this, and I'm at a risk of making everybody mad because I'm going to disagree with Tim and maybe say something that Terrance will disagree with, but let's do it, okay? Here's the thing. Art Briles had one tremendous flaw as a fan watching the football team, and it's that Baylor wet the bed in some really, really, really big football games. I'm primarily thinking of 2014 Cotton Bowl. I don't think I will ever recover because I thought that team should have been in the college football playoff. I thought that team got screwed getting left out of the first college football playoff. And then they give up a tremendous comeback to Michigan State that, in my mind, really set the program back in terms of, we'll see, good thing we didn't put Baylor in that playoff because look at what they did. That was devastating. But what Art Briles did, Tim, and this is where I just completely disagree with you, as long as Art Briles was the coach at Baylor post-2010, do you think Baylor was ever going to miss a bowl game? I don't. I think Baylor's floor from 2010 on was what we saw in 2012.
Yes, with Nick Florence.
That was the floor. So here's what I'll say. I've stirred up some discussion again in the Rogue Studios for saying this. I think a bowl game is the piss poor minimum standard to me. As a Baylor fan, especially in the current Big 12, where, like Terrance said, the big money's out of the Big 12. Texas and Oklahoma are gone. So, bowl game to me is bare minimum standard. I think 8 wins should be about where you're sitting in a question mark year. And I think you should be – I'm kind of with Terrance. And, Terrance, I want to hear what you were going to say. I think you should be competing for the top of the conference every year. Every year.
Listen, man, if we're going to sit here and talk about development and a culture of development, you have to start with football. And it needs to be some guy that can step up any given week. I mean, you had Robert Griffin, you had Nick Florence. We talked about it maybe last week or 2 weeks ago. All the quarterbacks that played in the Browse era, I mean, Chris Platt played with, 50 quarterbacks. And the thing is, we never really thought about losing and not going to a bowl game. Nick Florence and Lake Seastrunk and Glasgow Martin lit up the Holiday Bowl in 2012. I mean, we never looked back. So, okay, we got Nick Florence sitting on the bench. We got, out behind Robert Griffin. You got Bryce Petty. You got Seth Russell. This comes down to, are you a good recruiter and are you developing a bench? Are you a good recruiter and are you developing a bench? And if we can not make it to a bowl game, one of those are not true. You're not a good recruiter or you're not developing a bench. And I'm not saying that to slight anyone. It's just the reality of it. If we cannot get to a bowl game, that means we lost 6 games to who in our conference?
Agreed. To who? Agreed. Yep. And hey, by the way, case in point, Terrance, guys, maybe one of the most fun bowl games I've ever watched. 2015.
Against UNC?
Yes, when you literally that season
didn't have a quarterback.
Lost every scholarship quarterback to injury.
Hey, I bet Caden Knighton would love to play in that offense.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Anyway, sorry, Tim. I feel like Terrance and I just attacked your comments for 10 minutes. But
So 2 things off of
that.
Let's look at the last 10 years of Baylor football. Obviously, there's been some. So that was the last year. So 2015, Art Briles' last year. They go 10-5. Jim Grobe comes in. They go 7-6. Matt Rule 1-11. Out of the 10 years, we went to 7 bowl games. We missed 3 years. 2017, Matt Rule went 1-11. 2020, Dave Aranda went 2-7 in the COVID year. And then 2023, Dave Aranda went 3-9. Let's look at TCU. I'd say a team that has had consistent success in college football. So really since Dennis Franchione when did he start? 1998. So let's look at the last 10 years for them, where we had the final era of the Gary Patterson season. They've been to 6 bowl games. They missed it 4 times, 5-7 in 2019 with Patterson, 6-4 in 2020. In 2021, they went 5-7. They also went 5-7 the year after going to the national championship game. So for a team like Baylor, and I would agree, Scotty, with you. Yes. I won't say Art Briles coach, but a coach at the level of results that Art Briles generated. Yeah, you're looking at somebody that is getting 10 wins. They're going to 10 bowl games in 10 years. You're looking at somebody like, I think the most is 35, 36 bowl games in a row for Florida State under Bowden when he started his run. Most programs that are outside of the top do not go to a bowl game every year. They don't. So the ability from a scheduling perspective, let's look at next year. Let's say Sawyer Robertson gets hurt. We start this season off with 2 tough games against Auburn and against SMU. We lose those. All of a sudden, we have to be over 500 in conference play to be able to go to a bowl game.
And look at our conference schedule next season.
Look at our conference schedule. It's a little bit lighter on paper, but you would have said the same thing about Arizona State's schedule last year. They're like, wow, they're playing a gauntlet. So
Your point.
the conference schedule. It's always going to be very, very different based on the preseason because there's so much parity in the Big 12. A quarterback like Sawyer Robinson comes out of nowhere, and all of a sudden Baylor's a good team. Cam Scatabo takes over the world and puts Arizona State on in their back. Sam Leavitt is a very, very good quarterback, a tier below Sawyer Robertson, but a very, very good quarterback. They weren't expecting that from Arizona State. Everybody had Arizona and Utah at the top of the brackets. And where were they at the end of the season?
So who sets the standard for Baylor then? I mean, I get it. Like the average program is not going to go to a bowl game every 10 out of 10 years. But where is Baylor? Are we above average or are we just average? Because I assuming you got the same coach. If you're not going to a bowl game every 10 years, I mean, 10 out of 10 years, you're probably cycling through coaches. And now for school that's cycling through coaches, I get that. You know what I mean? But if Dave Aranda is here for the next 10 years, then it is no way we accept 6-6 any year. I mean, we barely accepted 8-4 last year. I mean, let's be real.
No, listen, but Tim, you walking through that schedule is this data, which is why I wanted to fire Dave Aranda after 2023. Mm-hmm. Because I'll give Matt Rule a pass year one after
I would not.
I know you don't, but listen, like the way that Bryles lost his job combined with the way that next season ended, with I mean, it was just bad. Like that, like the football program was in a bad spot. So 1-11 sucked, but like coaching change, we get it. COVID year, total only team in the Big 12 with a new head coach in a COVID year. That's a mulligan. Like we all knew that. But yeah, bro, for Dave Aranda to go to a Big 12 title and 2 seasons later miss a bowl game, I wanted his butt gone. I did. And maybe I was wrong. Like we're going to know this season. Everything we keep talking about keeps coming back to this year, guys. This year's crazy. We're going to know. But yeah, no, sub 500 is unacceptable to me for a head coach in their 5th season. It's unacceptable.
So all things equal, if healthy, sub 500 doesn't exist. But to your point,
agreed.
Tim, if things happen, we lose a star running back, star receiver, offensive line injuries. Listen, like we got to chalk it up. Like let's just get young guys in there and get reps. I get that.
Yeah.
So I'm with you.
One quick point. How many schools in a power conference have won or appeared in multiple conference title games with 3 different coaches?
In a decade, probably just Baylor. Yeah, within a decade, yes.
Yeah, within a decade. I haven't done the math on it, but I think that'd be a fascinating question. I have not been able to think of anything.
I'll ask AI real quick.
Ask AI real quick.
I mean, in recent history, it's probably just Baylor.
Yeah.
Or Houston, they did it. They did it with Sumlin.
I said power conference. So lower conference, you're going to get some of that because, again, you go to a conference title, you win a conference championship, you're getting poached, and you're going to the big games. So at power conference level,
let me word this for the AI. Say that again. How many college football programs? Say that again.
How many Power 5 conference football programs have gone to 3 conference championship games with 3 different coaches?
Gone to 3 different.
What about Washington? Didn't they do it?
I don't know.
In the past decade, is that what we're saying?
Within the 10-year,
20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, with the, let's see. So they.
I think Washington did it.
No. Peterson took them in 2017 and 18, I believe. And then Kalen DeBoer took them. But Jimmy Lake was a disaster there.
So Sarkisian didn't win one?
No. His best year was 8-4.
I thought we played them at 9-3 that year in 2011.
They were 7-6 that year in the Alamo after the Alamo Bowl.
They were 7-6 going into the Alamo Bowl.
No, after the Alamo Bowl.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, they finished 7-6, 5-4 in conference play. So
all
they
right,
got to play for a time.
Here's I'm going to be scrolling and reading as I read. So here's ChatGPT. Stanford, Harbaugh, Shaw. Oh, and then they said Troy Taylor. He's the new head coach that got fired. What are we talking about? Okay, so
yeah, I think to your point,
this
Tim,
is
I
where
think
AI
it's probably
funny.
just Baylor.
So
Yeah.
not Stanford. Washington did do it. Oh no,
Mm-mm. I'm looking at Football Reference. DeBoer
J-
did it. So DeBoer did
Peterson
it last
did it.
year, and Peterson did it, but
It
Sarkisian
says-
and Jimmy Lake did not.
It says Jimmy Lake won the Pac-12 North, but could not participate in a championship game due to COVID.
Oh, they were 3-1 that year. Yeah, I don't count that.
Yeah, that's tough. Okay. I'm still reading. Do you count? Okay, no, because
Well, you got to think about a team that has
Cincinnati did it if you count the Big East.
no, not Power 5.
No.
So to your point, Tim, you got to think about a program that's won 3 championships in 10 years. And if you think about those programs, it's Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, like the programs that don't change coaches.
Florida
exactly.
did it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Florida made the SEC championship game under McElwain and Mullen.
So 2.
I don't think, but they didn't win it.
They didn't
Well,
win it.
I'm just
But
saying
Matt
go.
Rule, but Matt Rule
I'm not
didn't
even
win
saying
it either,
win it.
Terrance. Matt Rule didn't win it either.
Yeah,
Of
I'm
course.
just saying go.
You're the only one that likes talking about it.
Yeah, I'm not even saying win the thing. I mean, even to go to a championship, because Rule didn't win a conference title. He went to the championship game and lost to Oklahoma in a brutal game.
Okay, so the answer, I just reviewed all ChatGPT. The answer is Florida. Baylor and Florida.
Yeah.
They're the only two in the past 20 years who, with 3 different head coaches, have made the conference championship game.
Yeah, Urban Meyer, Muschamp, Mullen. All 3 of them did it. And maybe, hey, they might have. No, I don't think McElwain and Napier hasn't, obviously. So, no, it's fascinating because
LSU in there in 20 years? If you do a 20-year range, LSU might be in there.
LSU might be there. But the point is we know what the realistic worst case scenario of Baylor football is, and it's probably the same for 95% of colleges. Is what Baylor went through in the 90s and early 2000s, what Kansas is just exiting. That's the worst case scenario. We also know with great confidence what the best case looks like. We know what it looks like because we've seen it under Art Briles. We've seen it very closely under Matt Rule. We've seen it under Dave Aranda, where you're competing at the highest level, winning Power 5 games, competing. I'd say if the college football playoff was around, Baylor would have 2 or 3 years in the college football playoffs over the past decade.
Big time, for sure.
So in one of the things that I always get in arguments with Texas A&M friends, don't hold that against me. I've got a few of them, but I always get into arguments with them. It's like, you have to find the right coach. You're just getting a coach that's done it. You're not getting a coach that can do it where you're at. You have to get a program builder, somebody that can actually set, to Terrance's point, the culture rather than winning to set the culture. A lot of programs expect that is, I want to win, and that sets the culture. That's blank backwards. It doesn't work that way. That is flash in the pan. That is not sustainable. That is not how you build and grow consistent results. Most programs are still looking for the coach or a coach that can get them to that level. Baylor has found 3 of them in a decade.
I think that's why I have a very short fuse for a lack of success, because Art Briles was great and he wasn't a fluke. Like, it wasn't a fluke. Like, you can do it in Waco. Matt Rule could do it in Waco. Aranda's done it in Waco. That's why I have a short fuse. Like, if Baylor, God help me, if Baylor does something like win 7 games in 2025, I will be insufferable.
We'll be the #1 podcast in Waco.
Let's go. Let's go. Guys, it's almost 6:30. We started at 5 so we could wrap up early tonight, and we've just had a great conversation. So any final thoughts from either of you gentlemen on Man, we've been all over the map tonight. NIL, transfer portal, Baylor's place. I think we've done a good job discussing that, actually. What is Baylor's place in the current NIL landscape? I think we've covered that pretty thoroughly, but any final words from either of you all?
I mean, the only two things that I take from this are Terrance was heavily under-recruited and under-ranked as a 2-star, and Scotty is up for sale, and he said he'd move his fandom in a minute for like, I don't know, $20.
$2 million.
$2
I will
million.
go to the highest bidder, starting at $2 million.
So I would do $2 million as well. I'll probably do less than that, but this is what I would do. I will root for your team no matter what. I would not root for your team if they played my team. That's all. I would always root for Baylor, and if it had to be Texas, I would root for Texas for $2 million until they play Baylor. But
I could be bought.
Yeah, well, I mean everybody can, man. I mean incentives matter. Like yesterday we were at baseball game, and like baseball's a slow game to me. I don't get it. It's just super slow. But like no one's talking. It's like we're there. It's hot. And I say, man, we got to get a participation trophy or something for the person who talks the most. And so coach comes over and he said, we can't do that because the kid that talks the most may not be the best kid. So we don't want to get him to be the leadoff batter. I'm like, yeah, you're right. And so if you mess up in my practices that I go to here in about 30 minutes, if you mess up, you running foul posts. Our kids don't like running foul posts. So I give them mulligans. So I said, the loudest 2 kids get 3 mulligans if they mess up. And those kids, I came home last night, Jenny's like, those boys were going crazy. Like, they were been playing great this weekend. I was like, no, incentives matter. They don't want to run in practice tomorrow, so they want to be loud. But to your point, I can be bought. Incentives matter. What you incentivize is what you get. And if you incentivize a great culture, you're going to get a great culture. And I think Browse did it. I think Rule did it. And I think Aranda is doing it. And I hope, listen, I don't want to go 7-5 because I'll be upset. I hope he goes 11-1, 10-2, and win a Big 12 championship. I will be overly satisfied with that. And if we get a playoff bid, like, shoot, let's go dancing. It's anybody's game.
Well, Tim, we'll have to have you back when we do a season preview in August. But I think all of us would say, to your point, let's assume Sawyer Robertson and Bryson Washington play all season. I think the ceiling is quite high in 2025.
The ceiling is the roof. It's the roof, baby.
All right,
and the roof
guys.
is going to be on fire if it's 7-5. I can tell you that.
I will set that fire unless by then somebody has paid me $2 million to instead root for their team. Okay. This was fun, guys. Tim, thank you so much.
Appreciate you guys.
All right, that's Tim Watkins, Bears Illustrated. I didn't let him plug it, so I'll plug it. Tim's been running Bears Illustrated for a long time. That's the 24/7 sports affiliate for Baylor. I know last week we had our friend Grayson from Sikkim 365, and I remarked, hey, we're one big family, and that's true. Like, I really hope Baylor fans go where they can get the content they want, but Terrance and I have actually been part of the family for a long time over there at Bears Illustrated. We love Tim. We love those guys. So if you're looking for a place to get that insider access, message boards, info, scoops, other than Sikkim 365 or in addition to Sikkim 365, or because you've never subscribed anywhere and you want to give someone a shot, give Bears Illustrated a shot. That's my pitch. Terrance, you got anything else?
Tim is great. Ashley is great. What they do over at Sikkim 365 is great. But I've been loving partnering with Tim. We haven't said it, but we've all been on a group chat for the last 8 years or so. Maybe not that long, but it's been a while. And we talk about life and we talk about other things. I know you're going to talk about Primetime Pets and some of the sponsors, man. Couple of weeks ago, man, you posted a picture of your dog and I posted a picture of mine. And I think this week is going to be a very tough week for us and our family. Our dog is nearing the end of his life, and we're going to try to enjoy these sweet moments while we have them. But it's going to be tough.
I'm really sorry to hear that, Terrance. That is tough.
Yeah.
It's really hard, man. So, well, Baylor fans, be praying for the Ganaway family. because that's not just tough on the men who, man, we become like kids again when we're with the right dog. It does.
Yeah.
But it's tough on your kids too, big time. So we will be praying for you, man. Yeah, thanks for the reminder too. I've been so scatterbrained this week, as I mentioned up top, that I do not want to neglect mentioning our sponsors, Primetime Pets. Thanks for their support. If you're looking for nice pet furniture, pet gates, things that you would actually put up in your house that don't look like crap, primetimepets.com. Check them out. Southern Roots here in Waco. I was just there last night. They had some live music going on. I was catching up with a friend. I ate some pizza. Check out Southern Roots. Dichotomy Coffee and Spirits. I think I'm going across the street to Dichotomy right after this to work on a couple things. Go see my friends at Dichotomy. And, of course, Fabled. Listen, you could give your money to Jeff Bezos. You could give your money to Amazon. Or if you want to buy a good read, you could support the local place in Waco and go to Fabled. That's what I would do. That's what you should do, too. Thanks for helping us get this show back off the ground. We'll be back next week. Or no, lies. We won't be back next week. Next week's Easter, Terrance.
He is risen. So we should have debated that when Tim was on the line. And I know we got to go. He is risen is not proper English, right?
Yeah, it is.
No, he was risen. He has risen.
He has risen.
Is it proper? He is risen. What does that mean?
Hey, I've got a little producer backstage info here. Tim Watkins is still in the chat. Tim.
Yes.
Theological question. Terrance wants to know if he is risen is proper grammar.
I have no idea.
It can't be, bro. Like, if you just think about it, like, it can't. It should be he has risen.
He did done rise? Is that right?
That's how they say it. That's how they say it where Terrance is from in East Texas, I'm sure.
We don't even say that. We just say, I don't even want to go there because we're talking about God. But I think he is risen is grammatically incorrect. Me personally.
So the overlords of AI say you're wrong. Yes, he is risen is grammatically correct, though it may sound archaic to some. It functions as a passive construction with the past participant risen acting as an adjective, as we all know.
Yeah.
So that means he's still, the way it's written is he's still rising.
No, risen is a completed act.
So
yeah, he did done rose.
I mean, we need to start printing those on those dang yard signs we got in our yard because people, he isn't on mine.
All right,
anyway,
guys.
That's the church I go to.
We're going to cut it out there. We will be off next week. Celebrate Easter with your family. Terrance and I will be worshiping with our family. I'm sure Tim as well. But in 2 weeks, we'll come back. Go vote on the March Madness tournament. Links in the comments. It's also in the description. Vote on the tournament. We'll come back with all that stuff in 2 weeks. We'll see what the news is. Spring ball will be wrapped up by then. We'll see what everybody's saying about the Baylor football spring. For Terrance Ganaway right here, my name's Scotty Swingler, and this has been Please Bear With Me. We'll see you next time. Y'all have a great Sunday night.
We are Rogue Media Sports.